Hello 5th and 6th grade and welcome to Lesson 6, Energy Flow in Ecosystems. For your do now, what I want you to do is pause the video and take 3 minutes to write down your answer to the following question. Where do organisms in an ecosystem get their energy? So take a moment, pause the video, think about your answer, and then comment it in the comment section below. What are the goals for this lesson? Students will be able to describe the cycling of matter and flow of energy among living and non-living parts of an ecosystem. What are the different types of organisms? All organisms need to use energy. Some organisms can receive energy in a variety of ways. Decomposers are organisms that break down organic material to get energy. Examples of this are mushrooms and bacteria. So what that means is that decomposers will break down organisms that have passed away and use that for energy. Consumers are organisms which eat other organisms to get energy. Examples of this are birds, snakes, mice, and more. Producers are organisms that produce their own energy. For an example of this are plants. They use the sun's energy to make their own energy. So for our first activity, what I want you to do is look at the animals to the right. Which way does energy flow between them? Work independently or discuss with somebody nearby. And then you're going to check the next slide for the answer. So take a moment, pause the video, look at the organisms to the right, and decide how energy might flow between them. When you're done, make sure you turn to the next slide. So this is how the energy would move between all these organisms. First of all, the energy between the plant and the rabbit is due to the fact that the rabbit is eating the plant. Then the snake might eat the rabbit, or the hawk might eat the rabbit, so that rabbit's energy goes to the hawk or the snake. The hawk also could eat the snake, so the energy from the snake would go to the hawk. And then, as we know, mushrooms are decomposers and they break down dead or decaying organisms. So they would likely break down the hawk or the snake or even the rabbit or the plant when it has passed away and it is decaying. So what is a food chain? How do we document how energy flows in an ecosystem? A food chain is the order in which organisms or living things depend on each other for food. Every ecosystem or community of living things has one or more food chains. Most food chains start with the organisms that make their own food, such as plants. So as you can see in the left-hand corner, there is an example of a food chain. So what is a food web? A food chain only includes the organisms involved, leaving out many organisms in an ecosystem. A food chain shows one possible flow of energy for an organism, while a food web shows the energy flow and relationships of multiple organisms in an ecosystem. The arrows in food chains and food webs show the flow of energy within the web. The energy flows from the sun to the plants and from the plants to the consumers. The arrow does not point in the direction of what eats what. So as you can see on the left-hand side again, there is an example of a food web. And you can see how there are many different arrows going in all different directions because all of these organisms in this ecosystem are interconnected. Alright, so for our check for understanding, I want you to use the list of organisms to create a food chain. Comment the organisms in the order that you believe they go in the section below. The list of organisms include plants, which are producers, insects, which are consumers, spiders, which are consumers, toads, which are consumers, the sun, which is an energy source and is always the start of the food chain, mice, which are consumers, fungi, which are decomposers, snakes, which are consumers, and owls, which are consumers. Then I want you to answer the following questions. Did you use all of the organisms in your ecosystem's food chain? And is a food chain the most accurate model of an ecosystem? Why or why not? So pause the video, take 7 minutes to create your order and answer these questions, and make sure you comment them in the comment section below. Trophic levels. Energy flows in an ecosystem from one trophic level to the next. All organisms can also be classified as either autotrophs or heterotrophs. Autotrophs are producers. Producers are the first trophic level, which includes organisms that are called producers or autotrophs because they produce their own food. Auto refers to self, and troph refers to feeding, so autotrophs are self-feeders. Producers include plants, algae, and some bacteria that use photosynthesis to make their own food. Heterotrophs. Heterotrophs include consumers and decomposers. Consumers are the second trophic level of organisms which get energy by eating other organisms. Consumers are further classified by the type of food eaten and by how many trophic levels of energy are involved. We've discussed this briefly before when we've talked about primary and secondary consumers. Primary consumers are consumers that eat producers, and secondary consumers are consumers that eat other consumers. Decomposers break down dead or decaying consumers and producers via chemical reactions and use the energy released from rearranging those molecules for growth and development. Decomposers can be fungi or mushrooms or bacteria. What are the different types of consumers? Organisms which consume or eat other organisms are called consumers, but not all consumers eat the same type of organisms. Herbivores are consumers which only eat producers, typically plants. Omnivores are consumers that eat producers and other consumers, and carnivores are consumers that only eat other consumers. So for our vocabulary review, a decomposer is an organism that breaks down organic material. A consumer is an organism that consumes producers and or other consumers. Producers are organisms that produce their own food, typically using the sun's energy. Food webs. A food web shows the energy flow and relationships of multiple organisms in an ecosystem. A food chain shows one possible flow of energy for an organism. Autotrophs are organisms that produce their own food, and heterotrophs are organisms that eat other organisms. For your exit ticket, the final step, I want you to take 3 minutes and pause the video to answer this question. How do food chains and food webs differ? Describe the function of each and why they are different. So take 3 minutes, pause the video, think about your answer, and then comment it in the comment section below. Last but not least, our homework. Comment your answers to the Do Now, the Check for Understanding, and the Exit Ticket in the comment section by May 11th. And up next is Lesson 7, Cells. If you need extra help on this topic, check out this video, Food Webs by Crash Course Kids. Have a great one!